Okay, don't mind me getting a little fancy today. I'm actually filming on a real camera versus my iPhone, so hopefully the quality is what I'm expecting it to be. This is me accepting the risk for if this footage looks terrible and I can't go live with this. I just wanted to try it one time, okay? Welcome back to my little corner of Girl World where I give you debrief after debrief after debrief on everything and anything that has been happening in my life. Today I want to switch gears a little bit away from the corporate quitting my job talk and more towards content creation and the influencer side of my life. I feel like ever since I became a full-time content creator, I've been getting more and more questions about how to become a content creator and how to break through all of the noise. So today I just want to give you some tips, some advice, some things that work for me if you are wanting to become a content creator. Before we get started, I just want to note that this video is going to come from a place of more social and brand strategy versus social best practices because I feel like there's so much content around that. In other words, I'm not going to go on and on about being consistent and being yourself and being authentic. All of those things you should probably know by now and are on so many other people's videos. I actually want to break down what consistency could look like. I want to break down some barriers around finding your niche because it's never a one size fits all, and I think there are really strategic ways of how you can break through and make your social content your own. Now, as most of you know, my last few roles when I was working in social media marketing at Lululemon were very strategy based, which is why I naturally lead with that mindset. And I feel like social strategy is a better way to look at things versus picking a niche, because when I think of a niche, I think of skincare, beauty, makeup, video games, cooking, that kind of stuff. But A, I feel like that only gets you 1/4 of the way there, and B, it really limits you in terms of how much content you can create. At the end of the day, there are a million people making beauty videos, a million people making cooking videos. What's actually going to make your content stand out and be different from every other person in that niche? So that's where building out your social strategy comes from, which is what I'm going to dive into now. And what I will say before we dive into the breakdown of a social strategy is to filter everything you put in your strategy through a lens of something that is really true to yourself, because that is really the only way that you're going to show up authentically and also be able to sustain that type of content. Because the last thing you want to do is show up as someone who you're not, burn yourself out, and then not want to post anymore. Trust me, I've done that too many times. Also, it's Diet Coke in my cup in case you were wondering. The first thing you want to think about is what your objective is. What's the umbrella statement, the one-liner of what you want to achieve with your content. Now, this is not, I want to go viral, I want to be famous, I want to make money. Those are all things that are your own life goals that has nothing to do with your social strategy, or at least it has nothing to do with your objective. I'll give you an example from my own content. My objective is to make people feel seen. Ideally, your objective is a really short but broad statement that can encompass a lot of different types of content. Another way to think of it is your objective is your what. What do you want to achieve? And then your next piece is your approach. That's how you want to achieve it. So in this case, my approach would be how I want to make people feel seen. Again, this is kind of like an overarching statement, but it's a little bit more specific as to what you plan on doing in your content in order to meet your objective. For me, if my objective is to make people feel seen, then my approach is by speaking as authentically as possible and sharing as many life experiences as possible to reach people where they're at. Keep in mind, this isn't the topics that you're talking about or the types of videos you're making. That will come later in the strategy. This is more so the holistic type of content that you want to make that can again filter into different types of content. So in my case, I'm saying I want to share all of my experiences, but that could look like fashion, dating, cooking, all of these different types of things. So try and think of it in that way. The objective and the approach are also really good things to keep in the back of your mind when you're making and filming content, because every time you make a piece of content or you're thinking of an idea, if it doesn't filter through the lens of your approach and it doesn't help you meet your objective, then maybe you don't film it or you tweak it so that it actually does. To me, this is a much more powerful way of creating a personal brand and a niche in some ways that not only helps focus your content, but also helps differentiate you from everyone else who's making similar types of content. I am not the first person to make chatty videos or to make fashion videos or cooking videos or beauty videos, but I can confidently say that I can offer things in my content that maybe other creators aren't focusing on. This is also helpful if you are like me and you can't make one type of video for the rest of your life. For me, I like to switch it up, and I feel like there's so many things that I'm interested that I want to share with my audience. After the approach, you can start thinking about your measures of success. In the corporate world, we obviously call it KPIs. I'm triggered by that word, so I'm going to call it measures of success. In a corporate setting, your KPIs or measure of success are usually vanity or quantifiable metrics like views, follows, likes, engagements, etc. And while you can definitely use those metrics as your measure of success, I personally avoid using those metrics because if I focus too hard on those metrics, it can lead me to become inauthentic. It can lead me to care about the wrong things, to focus on things like trends and whatever to get a quick viral video. And that's not what's going to help me make others feel seen. Instead, I like to focus focus on more qualitative metrics like resonance or the types of comments I'm getting from people. My favorite comment to receive is, "You put my thoughts into words so well. I've always felt this way but didn't know how to verbalize it. I thought I was the only one who felt this way. You made me feel so seen. You make me feel confident." Those are the things that make me feel like I'm actually doing my job well. Those also tie in so well with my objective and my approach, because that proves to me that people are feeling seen. A like could just mean that the person liked your video or agreed with your video or liked your hairstyle. I don't know. It gives less information that your strategy is working and your approach is working than something more qualitative. The next part of your strategy is to actually think about what types of content you want to make. So this is where the cooking, the fashion, the beauty, all of that kind of comes in. And what helps me is to think about the categories, but also break down what I'm going to be doing within those categories to again live into my overarching objective and approach. For me specifically, when I think about all my different content buckets, I always like to look at it through a lens of trying to make whatever I'm doing in that video or talking about in that video really approachable. At the end of the day, I'm just a regular girl like the rest of y'all. And so the way I like to come off in my content is the same way. I'm not preachy, I'm not better than you, I don't know what I'm doing, I'm just trying to figure it out and you're watching me do it. The goal is that I'm just bringing you along in my life so that if you're going through the same thing, we can do it together through a parasocial relationship. So as you can see, building out your own social strategy really helps to define the space that you want to occupy and the community that you want to build on whatever social channel you're trying to build on. There is endless room for anyone to become a content creator and anyone to make content. And sometimes it's just about adding one extra thing to your content that doesn't exist elsewhere that will build you a really loyal following. Now, the other thing I want to touch on in this video is actually starting your content creation journey, because I know starting is the biggest barrier for a lot of people, especially my friends. I think what I'm noticing from a lot of people who are starting out their content creation journey is they have these really big and cool ideas, but because they're just starting, they don't really know how to realize that big idea, and so they get frustrated and don't want to do it anymore. So my biggest piece of advice is to think of your ideas and then think of what the pared down version of that idea would be to make it more approachable for you just starting out. If you want to make outfit videos that have crazy transitions, maybe you try an outfit video that has one simple transition, or maybe you just start off with an outfit video that just jump cuts from clip to clip. The beauty of social media is that you don't need the most flashy editing, the best camera or mic quality in order to do well. Your content just has to have some value to share that others resonate with. I think it's more important to start scrappy, to start pared down, and then build your way up versus trying to go big right away when you don't necessarily have the tools to do so and then end up not posting at all. I also strongly believe that social media and perfectionism do not go hand in hand. Just the sheer speed of how fast the social media world moves, there's really no time to perfect anything if you want to get it out sooner than later. And at the end of the day, the only person who doesn't know it's perfect is you, because you're the only one who had the expectation. It's much better to just get the content out there in a place that you are happy with. It might not be perfect, but at least you're content, and just let it go out there and slowly but surely make your content better every single time. Which also leads me into the next tip is don't just try something once, see that it flops, and then never try it again. Especially for algorithm-based platforms like TikTok, sometimes it just doesn't get into the right people. There's so much content getting pumped out every single day. The only way to really know if something's working or not is to try it a few times, maybe with slight iterations with different ones, so that you can kind of see if like a different hook at the beginning changes things or a different length of video changes things. But trying something out for a month, 2 months, 3 months at least gives you more data to be able to decipher whether it's resonating with the right audience or if you need to pivot into something else. I also got a couple questions from Instagram, so I'm going to answer them here. The first question was how to keep coming up with ideas. And I do think that first piece around social strategy really helps, because essentially if you have that strategy, you should be able to talk about almost anything as long as you're tweaking it to filter into your approach and objective. But to get more specific on the ideas front, I do think number one, it is really helpful when you are basing your ideas on things happening in your life, because chances are there are always little things happening in your life. So if you can make content about everything that's happening, you have an endless source of content ideas. And secondly, I do think a big portion of concepting does come from your community and how much two-way dialogue you've fostered with your community. Obviously, this comes later when you've actually built a community, but you can start to see what people are commenting, what they're asking for, what's resonating with them to then fuel future ideas. For example, when I do fashion videos, I usually ask people what they want me to style next so that I can crowdsource ideas from people that are actually watching the videos versus me having to rack my brain being like, okay, what should I film next? Me answering these questions is an example of that. I literally went on my Instagram story and I was like, what do you want to see in this video? The other question that I got, which I actually get frequently, is the editing piece. Now, I am not a professional video editor by any means, so I'm not going to fully break down how to edit or how to use software like CapCut. I personally do use CapCut on my desktop and have found that to be the most user-friendly. What I will say though is, again, very similar to what I said about your big ideas and paring them down. Start with simple editing so that you could get used to using the software that you're using, whether it be in-app on TikTok or Instagram, or CapCut or some third-party app. Start with the basics of just learning how to cut up your videos, trim them down, change the volume, zoom in, those kinds of things. And you can quickly just do a Google search of how to do those things so that you can get familiar and start building that muscle memory. From there, I feel like the best way to go about it is to actually watch other people's videos. So if you're scrolling and brain rotting on TikTok or Instagram Reels or whatever, if you see an editing technique that you really like, search up that specific editing technique and then figure out how to do it in whatever software that you're using. If you love that they had like a sound effect transition, how to add sound effects to CapCut. If you like that they added a picture on top of their video, how to add a picture overlay on CapCut. I think it's a lot easier to slowly learn how to use your software versus trying to learn everything about the platform, because it can just get so overwhelming. But in terms of what I think are the simplest editing things that you can do to make your video as good as possible is, number one, focusing on your pacing. So for me, because I like to make chatty videos, I cut out any time that I'm taking an inhale or an exhale or pausing for a second or saying or like or whatever, so that every single sentence is just back to back to back and it just sounds like one stream of consciousness, because that ultimately gives the feeling that the video is going by quickly, even if it's a 2-minute long video. This isn't just about talking videos. It can be the clip compilation videos where you're just making the clips really, really fast. And that is like the most basic form of editing, where you're just cutting, deleting. Once you got the pacing down, you're good to go. Like, that will serve you for the longest time. I literally only did that type of editing for 3 years. I didn't add any sound effects, no text, no transitions, no nothing. And honestly, it worked out for me. If there's anything I didn't cover in this video, please leave it down in the comments and I will try my best to answer all of your questions. I really hope this video was helpful in giving you some first steps as it relates to the content creation world to help lessen the barrier to entry, because I know it can be really intimidating and a learning curve when you first get started. Trust me, I was there too. The beauty of content creation is there's no one way to do it, and everyone has something unique to offer, and I truly believe that everybody, if you want it, can do it. Let me know how you like this camera setup too, and hopefully I see you in the next video. Bye!